There is a moment in every life when we become aware, painfully aware, that we are not in control. Someone criticizes us, and we lash out. A small inconvenience breaks our calm. We scroll endlessly, waiting for the world to entertain us, validate us, or distract us. We are tossed like a leaf in the wind, reacting to every gust. And we call this life. But what if I told you that this is not your true self? That beneath the reflexes, beneath the outbursts, beneath the endless reacting, there is someone else, waiting, not a different person, but a deeper one. One who watches, one who knows. Today, we begin the journey of meeting that self. Let us now uncover 5 key truths that will show you how to stop reacting to everything. Not by suppressing your emotions, but by understanding their roots. Ladies and gentlemen, most of us walk through life believing that our reactions are our choices. That when we get angry, defensive, hurt, or anxious, it's simply because of what's happening in the moment. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and we shout. Someone forgets to text us back, and we spiral. We think, this is just how I feel. This is how anyone would react. But the truth is far more complex, and far more liberating. Reactions are not conscious decisions. In fact, they are often deeply unconscious repetitions. They are echoes, patterns from our past, playing themselves out again and again in different disguises. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where love is conditional, only shown when they perform, behave, or achieve. That child learns early on that they must earn love, not receive it freely. Now imagine that child as an adult. When they are ignored, even accidentally, they feel a sudden wave of pain. When they're criticized, they overreact. Not because the moment calls for it, but because an old, unhealed wound has been touched. That's what a reaction is. It's not about the present. It's about the past bleeding into the present. The person in front of you may be innocent, but your nervous system remembers something older, something buried. Reactions are habits of the emotional body. Just like the hand flinches when it touches fire, the emotional self flinches when it feels unsafe, even when there's no actual threat. It could be a tone of voice, a look, a word, and suddenly, without thinking, you're reacting. You're shouting, withdrawing, accusing, or feeling crushed, and often, you don't even know why. That's the tragedy. We think we're in control, but most of our behavior is driven by invisible scripts we never wrote consciously. Scripts that were written in moments of fear, shame, or unmet need. Taught to break free from these patterns, we must first see them. Self-awareness is the starting point of transformation. And this awareness doesn't come by force, it comes by quiet observation. The next time you react strongly, pause. Ask yourself, what did I really feel just now? Not what you said, or did, but what happened inside. Was it fear? Was it abandonment? Was it rejection? Go even deeper. Ask, where have I felt this before? You'll often find that the root lies in something long ago, a forgotten moment, a childhood memory, a relationship wound. When you begin to trace your reactions back to their source, you loosen their hold on you. There is a profound difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is automatic, driven by the past. Response is intentional, rooted in the present. But you can't respond wisely until you know what's really happening inside you. When you understand that your reaction is not the whole of you, that it is a signal from an old wound, you create space. You begin to watch the emotion, instead of becoming it, and in that space there is power. A person who reacts constantly is a slave to their unhealed pain. A person who understands their reactions, learns to sit with them, breathe through them, and choose their next step consciously. That person is free, not because life stops being difficult, but because they are no longer tossed around by every trigger, every comment, every disappointment. They become rooted. And so, I invite you to look at your reactions with compassion, not shame. They are not signs of weakness. They are signs of where healing is needed. Don't fight them. Listen to them, learn from them. And in doing so, begin the journey back to your truest, most liberated self. There exists a moment so brief, so subtle, that most people never notice it. It is the sliver of time that exists between something happening and how we respond to it. It's the space between the trigger and the reaction. And within that space lies everything. Your peace, your power, your freedom. But because we rarely recognize that space, we live as if we have no choice. Someone offends us, and we strike back. We feel uncomfortable, and we escape into distraction. A mistake happens, and we instantly defend ourselves. But all of this, it is not necessity, it is simply the absence of awareness. Because if you can slow down time just enough to feel that space, to even sense that it's there, you will unlock a level of control and inner stillness most people never discover. Most of our reactions are unconscious. They happen faster than thought, like touching something hot and pulling your hand back before you even realize it. Emotional reactions operate below the surface. But unlike physical reflexes, emotional reflexes are not just hardwired. They're shaped by past experiences, fears, and unresolved feelings. If someone criticizes your work and you immediately feel worthless or angry, that response is not born in that moment. It was planted long ago. What makes it powerful, and sometimes dangerous, is the speed with which it occurs. It feels automatic, but it doesn't have to be. When you become aware of the space between what happens and how you respond, you begin to realize you are not your reactions. You are the one who notices them. You are not the anger. You are the witness of the anger. This shift in perspective is the foundation of because once you see that your reactions are not the truth of who you are, you can choose differently. It begins with pausing. Just for a second. Just long enough to breathe. Just long enough to ask yourself, what's really happening here? That pause is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the sacred ground on which conscious living is built. In that pause, you reclaim your authority. You are no longer a puppet pulled by invisible strings of emotion. You become a deliberate human being. Let's take a practical example. Imagine someone says something rude to you, perhaps at work, or even at home. Your natural impulse might be to snap back, to defend yourself, to shame them. But if you've trained yourself to recognize the space between stimulus and response, you pause. In that pause, you might notice that your heart is racing, that your mind is preparing a harsh reply. But instead of unleashing it, you observe. You ask, what would happen if I didn't respond this way? What's more important, being right, or being at peace? In many cases, you'll find that silence, or a calm question like what made you say that, diffuses the situation entirely. That power came from the space you created. This space isn't always easy to access, especially when emotions run high, but it can be trained. Through practices like meditation, breathwork, and mindful awareness, you begin to stretch that space. Just like a muscle becomes stronger with use, your ability to choose your response becomes more reliable. You move from being reactive to being reflective. And here's the most beautiful truth. When you live from that space, people around you change too. They sense your calm, they respond to your stillness. You become a stabilizing force, rather than part of the chaos. Your relationships deepen. Your confidence grows. Not because you control others, but because you control yourself. So I invite you to become aware of that sacred pause. Protect it. Cherish it. Use it. It is small but mighty. It is quiet but life-changing. And in that space, you will discover not only peace, but your true self, patiently waiting for you to return. Every time you react strongly to something, whether it's anger, jealousy, hurt, or defensiveness, it's easy to believe that the cause lies outside of you. Someone says something offensive, and you react. Someone receives praise, and you feel overlooked. A partner forgets a special date, and you're devastated. The mind quickly points outward and says, they did this. This is why I feel like this. But the truth is far more intimate. Reactions are not simply responses to the external world. They are reflections of your internal world. In other words, reactions are mirrors. What you feel so deeply when someone says or does something is not just about them, it's about you. It's about something within you that is being touched, exposed, or threatened. And until you begin to look into that mirror, you will continue to believe that everyone else is the problem. Think about this for a moment. Two people can face the exact same situation, yet have completely different reactions. One person is calm, while the other is furious. One brushes it off, while the other is deeply wounded. Why? Because it's not the event, it's the meaning we attach to it. And that meaning comes from within, from our history, from our wounds, from our insecurities. That is why your reactions are precious teachers. They tell you where you still hurt. They show you what you haven't healed. They reveal who you believe you are. Let me share a story. There was a man who would become extremely agitated every time he was interrupted. At work, during meetings, at home, if someone cut him off, he'd react sharply. He thought the problem was that people were rude, but when he finally stopped and asked himself, why does this bother me so much? He uncovered a painful truth. As a child, he was often silenced. His opinions were dismissed. He was made to feel that his voice didn't matter. So now, as an adult, every interruption felt like a return to that powerlessness. His reaction wasn't about now, it was about then. Once he saw this clearly, his healing began. And slowly, his reaction softened. This is what happens when you begin to see reactions as mirrors. You stop blaming others for how you feel. You stop being at war with the world. Instead, you become curious. You ask yourself, why did this affect me so deeply? What fear did it awaken? What belief about myself did it threaten? That curiosity is the beginning of emotional maturity, and it is a profound act of courage. Because it's much easier to blame others than to look within. It's much easier to call someone toxic than to admit you have triggers. But make no mistake, doing this inner work does not mean you excuse poor behavior from others. It means you separate their action from your reaction. You recognize that how they behave is their responsibility, but how you respond is yours. And in that recognition, you regain your power. Over time, this kind of inner reflection creates deep transformation. You begin to understand your own emotional patterns. You notice how certain events activate certain beliefs, like I'm not good enough, or I don't matter. And once you see these patterns clearly, they begin to lose their grip. You are no longer reacting blindly. you are responding wisely. You are no longer controlled by hidden wounds. You are healing them. So, the next time something triggers you, take a breath and look into the mirror. Don't rush to attack or defend. Ask yourself, what is this reaction trying to show me about myself? Because hidden within every emotional reaction is a piece of your story waiting to be heard, understood, and healed. And when you learn to listen to yourself in this way, you no longer live at the mercy of the world. You become grounded, aware, and free. Stillness is often misunderstood in our world. People mistake it for passivity, for being weak or indifferent, for doing nothing. But stillness is not about inaction, it's about choosing not to be shaken by every disturbance. It is the ability to remain centered when everything around you is in motion. It is the quiet inner ground you can stand on when emotions rise like waves trying to pull you under. And it is in this stillness that true emotional mastery begins. Imagine the ocean. On the surface, waves crash, winds howl, and storms rage. But deep beneath, there is silence, there is calm. The ocean doesn't stop being powerful because of its calm depths. In fact, its depth is what gives it power. In much the same way, we live our lives on the surface. We react to noise, to words, to pressure, to judgment. We get caught up in our own storms, but there is a deeper part of us, our true self, that exists beneath the noise. Most people never access it because they never sit still long enough. To find it, stillness is not something you find in the external world. It's an internal state. And like any skill, it must be practiced. The modern world makes this difficult. We are constantly stimulated, distracted, and pulled in every direction. Notifications, deadlines, arguments, social media, opinions. We are in a constant state of noise. And in that noise, it becomes almost impossible to hear your own inner voice. This is why people overreact. They are disconnected from themselves. They're not responding from their inner truth. They're reacting from tension, fear, habit, or exhaustion. When you begin to cultivate stillness, you create space between what you feel and what you do. You begin to notice the emotion rise in you, but you are no longer swept away by it. Anger comes, but you don't lash out. Sadness visits, but you don't collapse. Instead, you witness. You breathe. You allow the feeling to pass through you, without letting it control you. This is not suppression. Suppression pushes emotion down and ignores it. Stillness allows emotion to move without resistance, but also without reaction. It is a middle ground, a place of balance. This kind of stillness can be cultivated in simple ways. Taking a few deep breaths before speaking, sitting in silence each day, even for 5 minutes, observing your thoughts without judgment, journaling your emotional patterns to better understand them. These practices may seem small, but they are powerful. They train your nervous system to remain steady. They remind you that you are not your thoughts, not your moods, not your impulses. You are the awareness behind them. People often ask, how do I stop getting so angry, so anxious, so overwhelmed? The answer lies in stillness. Because when you are still, you are not reactive, you are clear. You begin to notice when emotion is rising and when your old patterns are about to take over. And with that noticing comes choice. You can pause. You can breathe. You can speak differently, think differently, act differently. Not because the emotion disappeared, but because you didn't let it drive you. This does not mean you will never feel shaken. Life will always test your balance. There will be days when you are tired, vulnerable, or triggered. But the difference is that you will know where your center is, and you will know how to return to it. That's the gift of stillness. It doesn't make you immune to life's challenges. It makes you resilient. It anchors you in truth when the surface is full of noise. And from that quiet center, you will begin to live not as a victim of emotion, but as a master of your own experience. You cannot truly transform your emotional reactions unless you are willing to face what lies beneath them. Many people want to change the way they respond to life, but they avoid the very places where those reactions are born. They want peace, without discomfort, healing, without pain, growth, without facing the truth. But that is not how transformation works. You cannot heal what you do not embrace. You cannot rise above your reactions until you understand what fuels them. Every emotional reaction has a root, and that root is often something we'd rather not feel. Shame, fear, rejection, grief, loneliness, or guilt. These emotions are heavy, and because they're uncomfortable, we push them away. We numb ourselves with distractions, blame others for our pain, or pretend we're fine when we're not. But what we resist does not disappear. It hides, and from the shadows, it controls us. The more we avoid a feeling, the more power it gains. That is why the things we deny are often the very things that control our lives the most. Think of someone who always gets defensive when receiving feedback. On the surface, it might seem like pride or arrogance, but if you look closer, you might find deep insecurity, a belief that they are not good enough, and that criticism confirms their worst fear. Or consider someone who is overly controlling. In relationships, beneath that behavior may lie a deep fear of abandonment, perhaps rooted in childhood loss or neglect. Until that fear is faced, understood, and embraced, the reactions it causes will persist. This is not about blame. It's about responsibility, the courage to turn inward and face what hurts. Facing these inner wounds is not easy. It requires honesty, patience, and tenderness. But it's also the most powerful act of self-love you can offer yourself. When you stop running from your pain, you begin to hear what it has been trying to tell you all along. You learn that your anger was a shield, your anxiety was a signal, your sadness was a cry for attention, not from others, but from yourself. These emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. They bring you information about where you've been hurt, where you've been ignored, where you've been afraid to feel. Healing begins when you stop judging these parts of yourself. You hold space for your own discomfort. You allow the tears to come. You sit with the fear, the grief, the emptiness, not to drown in it, but to listen to it. Over time, the feelings begin to soften. They no longer demand your reaction because they've finally been acknowledged. You become less reactive, not because life stops triggering you, but because your wounds are no longer bleeding. There is immense freedom in this. When you embrace the parts of yourself you once tried to hide, you become whole. Your triggers lose their edge. Your past stops controlling your present, and your reactions become thoughtful, grounded responses instead of unconscious explosions. You begin to walk through life with a sense of calm, not because you've avoided pain, but because you've befriended it. This is the heart of emotional transformation, not avoiding what is uncomfortable, but walking straight into it with compassion, not fixing yourself like you're broken, but meeting yourself where you are, with honesty and love. And when you do that, you stop reacting to everything. Because now, you are no longer afraid of your own inner world. You've made peace with it. You've seen the darkness, and instead of running, you stayed. You've listened. And in that brave act of presence, you found something that no reaction could ever give you. True, lasting peace.